What's up, guys? We are live for this special 40th anniversary live stream or live watch along, whatever you want to call it, of Friday the 13th, Part 3, 3D. 40 years to the day that this movie was released in cinemas in the US. Certainly, I can't verify whether that was the same in the UK, but yeah, August 12th. August 12th. 1982, 40 years, how time flies. And for this very special occasion, I have got two very, very fond fans of the Friday the 13th franchise. First up is Chris from Slasher Home Video. What's up, man?
What's up, man? I'm ready.
He's got his 3D specs on. He's got his 3D glasses on.
All right. These things are already giving me a headache, so
yeah,
that bit's over.
It's probably not a good idea to watch a 90-minute movie with them on.
No.
And next up, one of the sort of, how would I describe it? Someone who's like an authority figure on the Friday the 13th franchise. His choices of best films in the franchise can sometimes be a little bit questionable, but
who's on it though?
Well, his opinions on Jason X can be quite triggering to some people, but next up is Lorne. What's up, Lorne?
Not a real lot. So Jason X is the third best in the franchise, no matter how you look at it, because I like to have fun.
You like to have fun?
I like to have fun. I don't like to be insulted, but I like having fun. So that's the difference between like a new beginning and an X.
Oh, man. Come on.
I find it hilarious that the further south you go in America, the more the appreciation for a new beginning grows. And the further north you go, we have no use for it. So that's how that
say,
rolls.
Man.
Trying to say draw your own conclusions.
Nah, we're pretty dumb out here. It's okay. I'll admit that.
Well, the public schools here are not exactly.
My camera out of focus to you guys? There you go.
No, you're good.
That's fine. It's kind of in the States to Britain. It's kind of different, like because in England, it's like that north-south divide where there's like people in the south look down the noses of people in the north. But I kind of feel in America, it's different. It's like people in the north, maybe in the northeast, look down the noses a little bit. I don't mean you, Lorne. I'm just saying there's that.
Yeah, they're uppity.
Yeah.
They're uppity up there.
The hilarious thing about it is it's just a few pinpricks on the map that make that opinion or that perception happen. Generally speaking, outside your metro areas, no one's looking down their nose at anyone anywhere in the country because of where you come from. But one thing I will say is it's pretty interesting because like the first film is my favorite of the franchise, and I don't think that should be a controversial choice. But increasingly over time, it is getting to be a controversial choice. So I think
it's my least favorite of the original 8.
Oh wow! See, that's unthinkable to me. But opinions are all fair and all valid. But I think age does play a role there, though, too. Like when Friday came out, even those of us had to wait a few years to see it on television. It was like Magnetic North. It was a big deal, and I think to this day, it's still the most atmospheric and successfully emotional of all the films in the franchise. So I love the original.
I still like it. That's saying it's my least favorite of the original 8 is not an insult because I still like it a lot. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I grew up watching like 3, 5, and 7 or 5, 7, and 8, the ones that everybody hates. So that was my like introduction to it. It's what I saw the most.
I don't hate 7. I just think it's incompetently made. 8 is just a train wreck, but it's kind of fun.
Not incompetently made.
7th film? The seventh film is incompetently made. Yes.
No. Now you're
Yeah.
insulting
Yeah.
John Carl Buechler, and I won't have that.
No, it's a badly made movie. Probably not his fault. There's a lot of things going on with the franchise at that point. A lot of voices talking about what it should be, which didn't know what the hell they were talking about. You see, I'm one of those few that think that Paramount giving up on the franchise was a good idea, because when they decided they knew better for the franchise is when it went wildly off track for me.
But that's the kind of shit I eat up anyway. So I like absurd and weird and cheesy.
Did I mention that Jason X is my third favorite film? So, I like all those things too. I just don't like I don't like having to turn off your brain completely. And the thing about the Fridays are they're very primal. Like the first 4 films, right? Very primal experiences. Basic storytelling, basic character construction, but they're primal. They work on that level that going into a dark room that you don't know works on, right? When the series abandoned that, first just because they wanted to make the 5th film as sleazy as possible, and then the 6th film wanted to be as widely popular as possible, they lost something. Definitely lost something for me. But anyway, we completely hijacked this.
Yeah.
From the
Sorry,
host.
Mike.
No, it's okay. I'm just we'll get going now. I mean, Griffin, I've just DM'd him. He knows that we're starting now, so he'll probably jump on board in the next 20 minutes or so. We'll just have to we'll just pause it wherever we're at, and then he can just jump on. But we might as well get this going now. So let me just get myself set up. I don't know where. I'll just let you know when the Paramount logo comes in, and then I'll just say, okay, I am at 3 seconds. So
I'm assuming y'all are watching Scream Factory discs, right?
I am watching a digital version.
I'm using the
my
DVD set.
Yeah, my version is 1:35:14.
So you're on the Paramount logo?
Yeah, 3 seconds in.
I'm way ahead of you then now. I have to go back.
Okay, good to go. Okay,
Tell me when you
down.
get to Jason Inc. Frank Mancuso Jr. production.
Okay, so Chris, you ready to start then? 4 seconds in. So
yeah.
3, 2, 1, play. So we say when it says Frank Mancuso?
I should be about right. It's not that important that I'm right on. So this movie, the first 2 films were made on the East Coast.
Griffin's just joined in. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Griff?
There.
There's a thunderstorm going on at Griff's house. Griff, we are...
Yeah, about
40 seconds in.
Right when Amy is in the...
Yeah, it's just a flashback scene.
Yeah.
Good.
So the first 2 films were shot on the East Coast and really feel like it. And then from this point on in the franchise with part 3 onward, they're made in LA and they look like LA. I think something definitely got lost in that. If my one wish for a new Friday, which is going to come true, the first that there'll be one, actually that there'll be 2, but you didn't hear it from me, is that they'd come back to the East Coast and make something with proper fall leaves and just the feeling, the sound of the wildlife from the first film is just so atmospheric and so good. This was not how the film was originally going to begin, by the way. They added the ending of the second film very late in the process.
What, just to pad time or something? No,
they were worried that people wouldn't be able to follow how it, because the The scene where you're seeing Ginny get taken out on the stretcher on the television was like people didn't know who that was. They felt like all the test audiences just didn't know. So they felt like they had to show the ending of the previous film, which is sort of absurd. And then they filmed the one really dodgy shot of Jason like rolling over on his side in 3D, which is the most awkward way to start a 3D film, I think, ever. But
so this scene, the flashback now, is this, I always forget, is this Steve Dash or Warrington Gillette? Because
it's Steve Dash.
Yeah.
The jump through the window was Warrington Gillette. You know, Warrington gets a lot of crap, but you know what? That is like one of the iconic moments in this franchise's history. So give the man his due. He might overplay it. He might be a jackass, but you know what? Credit due. It's an amazing sequence.
What about Ari Lehman?
We don't
give
like
him
him.
the same.
No, I don't. I've had to listen to his music live, so no. Sorry, Ari.
It's the difference in Jason's size from 2 to 3 as well. He looks like a normal, like 5'10" guy in 2. He immediately jumps. Well, I don't know how big Richard Brooker was, but he looks like a 6'3" kind of guy.
Completely different body type.
We don't track continuity in this franchise, guys. We're doing it wrong if we're doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is a franchise that has you believe in the next film that Rob is searching for the killer of his sister for years, apparently, but she died 2 days ago. So you can't worry about the timeline. So again, they're primal experiences.
What year is this set then? 2 or 3? Is it set in 1979? 1980? Sorry.
Well, you got to figure the first film says present day and was released in 1980. Certainly, it looks like 1980 to me. So if you use that, there's a 5-year jump to 2. So 85, and this film is the next day. So we stay in 85 for a little while, for like 3 movies, and then we jump forward a few years again. But again, Chris is right. Like, that's not the way to watch these movies.
No, if you do that, like part 7 is in like 2012 or some weird shit like that, ain't it?
Yeah. It's hard. I've always had a difficult time believing that Steve Miner like made both the second and third films, because they're so different visually. Like, look at all this shadow. Look at all these uses. Look at even the performances here. They're just they're so raw. And then 3 is so slick. It looks like a sitcom. Here's the real question. There's a kerosene lamp in the window. Does Jason like refill the kerosene and light it carefully and set it in the window?
Yeah.
Hey, Griff, how are you?
Well, if you think of that, sorry, not to interrupt that, but if you think of that, then he replaces these candles on the regular, right?
Absolutely. I think he's a beekeeper on the side, so he has his own wax factory in the back of the shack.
How dated are these opening credits, by the way, with the 3D coming right at you?
This is the best opening credits ever in any movie ever.
Well, I'd say 6 has got something on it with the James Bond, you know.
Nah, you never beat this, man.
Do you remember when there was opening credits to any movie? Because we don't do that anymore for some reason. Now the movies just start. You might get a title card.
It's too much time, man.
No, but the credits on the other side can be like literally 10 minutes long.
Oh, yeah. You just took the words right out of my mouth there. Like, you know, end credits now are just...
And these opening credits, like, I want this to be my favorite movie. It's not, but the opening credits in this song, it's so good. It's so good, man.
I think
This movie,
Manfredini thought he was going to have a minor hit on his hands like they had with the Jaws and Star Wars disco themes. Didn't quite happen.
I've always thought that the part 3 is always kind of like everybody's like third favorite Friday film, or roundabouts.
It's in
For
the
me,
middle
it's-
for me.
It's never anybody's like top film, but it's never anybody's like least. It's always kind of like in the middle of the pack. Do you know what I mean? It's like a lot of people go for 4 or 6.
I will say this movie has grown on me. It used to be towards the bottom. I used to think it was boring. It's grown on me a lot, though.
I don't know. I watched these movies all for different reasons, I guess. And of the first 4, this is my least favorite. Definitely. 1 and 4 are just great films, and 2 is a great film too. It just doesn't rise to those 2. But then I watch like Jason Lives for completely different reasons, because it's the big dumb comic book spectacle film. You know, I think this franchise is kind of amazing that these films hang together at all. Have you guys seen this projected in 3D? Not the lame home video 3D, real VD versions?
No.
The 3D really works in the original projected Paramount box 3D. Polarized 3D had the ability to really break that perception barrier and feel like things were actually coming out of the screen, which the most recent Real D experiment from Hollywood was completely unable to do. All it did is add a little bit of depth. If you ever do get a chance, definitely. And if you're in the greater Philadelphia area, Exhum Films do own a print on 3D, and they own all the equipment to properly project it. So every once in a while, they do a screening at at some random theater. I do recommend.
See that.
Yeah, it's pretty. I mean, the print is pretty beaten up, but it's still, but that actually works for this movie. So
I love this scene now.
I was gonna say this DVD copy looks like garbage, but it works.
I've just got to say, Lorne, the scene there with Harold and Edna, where Edna looks out to the washing line and she briefly sees Jason. Is that a play on the Halloween? Do you think he's kind of ripped off Halloween? So, like, the scene with Halloween where Lottie looks out and Michael stood. It does feel very similar.
Sure, I think this whole franchise basically has spent a lot of time borrowing from Halloween. That doesn't mean that's not a bad thing. But there's 2 things about it that are cool. The first thing is they're establishing the wardrobe change for Jason. That's the first thing. So the overalls are gone because he stole clothes. And Harold has to be a big guy intentionally. Second thing that's cool about it is this is one of the first things that was shot for the film. So it's still Stan Winston's makeup that is visible for a half a second before he ducks behind the bed sheets. And this is all that. This and the very ending were filmed with the makeup, and then they abandoned it. I still do wish that Carl Fulton's look had been used for this film, though. I do like that look more because I think it looks circus freaky and weird, and that's scary to me.
Yeah, he looks like Sloth. I don't like it. The one they used.
Yeah. Oh, at the end of this film, I think is a horrible. It looks like bad makeup, I think. Especially when you compare it where the next film goes with the makeup. It's mayfly eggs. And that's a joke about the fact that this is being shot in California.
Where's everybody at? I'm at the bit where he's just picked up the rabbit.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I don't really get the rural bodega thing. It's a little bit weird.
Well, I've seen places like that. It's more like I mean, I guess now you'd call it like a Whole Foods type of mom and pop fresh vegetable store or something.
Oh, that
Edna seems so much younger than I remember.
Oh,
You know, when you watch it as a kid, with the hair rollers, it's like she's playing someone who's meant to be about 50, but in reality, she's probably about like
23.
late. It's just like he looks about 50, probably older, but
I do appreciate that. One thing this film tries to do, which the franchise would lose it very quickly after this, is try to have people look like real people in roles. This guy playing Harold would never be cast today in anything in Hollywood because he looks too real, like a real person.
yeah.
He's not a mannequin. He's not an. It's weird. Like when they decide, oh, we're gonna have a guy who looks like an aging. It's like Hollywood's version of that. It's a cartoon version of it.
We just got our first 3D shot. It just looks so odd when you watch it without the glass. You know, like now in hindsight, these scenes are just so obviously, you know, forced in just for a new kind of like, you know. The yo-yo scene is just so
and the
ridiculous.
popcorn. Yeah.
I mean the broomstick scene earlier.
Yeah. Well, you have to remember that there had been a couple 3D releases, smaller 3D releases like Parasite, that had actually made money, and the majors were all racing to try and get their 3D tentpoles out. And Friday was beat Jaws and Amityville to the punch, and this movie was the one that benefited the most from the 3D wave, really. And that's kind of amazing considering it was up against a Jaws sequel, right? Then again, this is a much better film. I wish the whole movie looked like this scene, to be honest with you. Because the movie changes its approach after this. As soon as we meet the kids, it becomes kind of a different movie. This also, when I saw the remake, this is what I was reminded of. Like, you introduce these characters and then we kill them off real early.
You've got to say, they take a long time to introduce the main cast in this film. You know, 15 minutes in and we still haven't seen the main antagonists. Well, sorry, main protagonists. I was getting mixed up.
And what is the point in that? Because these guys die. We get to know them for this long and then they die. And it's not even like, yeah, he got the clothes. But other than that, what's the point in this long, drawn-out opening scene? I don't get it.
It's weirdly very similar to the opening of Halloween 2, where Michael's just walking around town gathering his thoughts. You know? I think, but I like this more than I like something like in Part 6, where they introduced the two kids making out on the hill who just got engaged, just to be killed immediately. At least we feel like we know these people. It feels like it has some impact. I don't really like what I call the banana hitchhiker thing, which is, you know, just introducing characters to kill them in the same scene they're introduced in. Listen, with the actual banana hitchhiker is pretty great, but in general, I don't like that. So this is okay. And to be honest with you, I like both these characters a lot more than any of the regular kids that come. I know people are supposed to love Shelley, but if you were in a room with Shelley for an hour, you'd want to beat the hell out of him.
People love Shelley?
Well, they let
I feel bad for him for a little bit, but that wears off quick.
But so that we'll get to it, I guess. But it's ridiculous, right? Because like he thought he had a chance with Vera, really? Like, who's that delusional?
Well, I've always taken it as he could have, man. He just fucked it up. He was too annoying.
No way.
If he had been cooler, he had a shot, I think.
I think that's a big ask.
Here we get Shelley playing his first practical joke.
Wearing the mask from Alice Sweet Alice.
Yeah.
Similar title.
Chris is hot as hell, by the way.
Chris has no personality. That's one of my big problems with this movie. She is a bland final girl. Until we get to the girl from Jason Takes Manhattan, there wasn't a blander final girl in the series.
Palm trees.
Oh, yeah.
This girl has nothing going on except a doe-eyed look of like, oh, I had trauma in the past, maybe. I don't like any of these kids.
Careful,
And I don't.
Chris.
And why they're hanging out with the stoners from the 60s, I have no clue. Because that did not happen in '82. I'm going to tell you, kids were not hanging out like with these people. They might have bought drugs from them on the deck of their porch, but they weren't. They were not going on vacation with them. I love this woman. She's a better character than we should stay with her the whole movie. She can make some food, and do some laundry.
Kitchen sink film.
I just think that this is like the blandest group of kids in the entire franchise in many ways, which is a shame because I like a lot of things the movie does, but these characters, man. I mean, they make a girl pregnant just so she has a defining characteristic.
I can't believe this guy made it with the bandana, made it into the video game.
I wonder in a couple years, like, will kids even understand why this scene with the cops even happens? Because it's going to be legal everywhere.
It always reminds me like a bit. It's like Shaggy from Scooby Doo. You know, the guy, the pothead. It's just like you got the mystery machine. You got this sort of like Shaggy type character who's just like obviously Shaggy was never. It was always insinuated basically in Scooby Doo. Shaggy was even the movies make reference to it. Shaggy was the pothead. You know.
Yeah, there's a part in the first movie where they're in the mystery van.
Yeah.
And
there's just smoke coming out of the top.
Burgers.
Yeah, but it's clearly meant to be something else.
Yeah. Very clever.
Shelley always reminds me of the guy from Part 5. You know, the guy who gets killed at the beginning. What's his name?
Roy's kid.
Don't try and make the fifth film better. Don't do that.
I'm not.
I kind of don't like when the Fridays try and be funny. Again, it's that primal experience of the first two films that works so well. And this is like a good example. Oh, isn't it funny? They're eating pot.
I'm fine with it as long as like I don't like the humor in 6 so much. I like it to be kids being like shitty or stupid or like messing around. That's fine with me. That's just kind of part of the franchise as I know it.
Can you get like an online map? Because obviously in the game you got like Higgins Haven and you got like the lake. Is there like an online map where it links all these locations together? Or do you just have to basically use your imagination?
There's fan-made ones, but they don't make any sense really. I mean, again, you get to the 8th film, there has to be a canal leading to the Atlantic Ocean, and I mean, it's not really workable. I know this isn't a real popular sentiment, and I'm cutting off one of my favorite films, period. Not just of the franchise, period, but I kind of wish they had stopped at 4. Because imagine how legendary that group of films would be. Like, I don't think anyone thinks any of the first 4 films are actually bad films. Does anyone?
So, what's the scope? What was the actual scenario with the first? So, when they came into 4, they had a clear plan to end it on 4 because of diminishing returns to the box office. Did 4 outperform? So, did 4 perform better than they expected? So they went, oh, okay, so we can't end it now. It's made decent money, so we're going to have to go back and do doing a fifth film, or
So one of the
because
things that we
5
have
came
to,
out 1 year after 4, so there was a
so what you have to remember here is that a lot of people talk about it, this being the Paramount years. Paramount did not make these films. They didn't. The production companies, the individual, for instance, in the case of the next film, Friday 4 Productions, right? They made a deal with Paramount to distribute the films. Paramount were the distributor. They got the films to theaters, and they did play a part in post-production, as many distributors do. But these are all independent productions in the true sense that were picked up for distribution. So I think when people think there was a plan, there was no plan. The first film made a lot of money, more than anyone expected. The second film continued that trend. And the thing is, these films were made very cheaply compared to what they made. But they knew even with the second film, we needed a gimmick from now on. So the third film in 3D. The fourth film, what do? Oh, well, this is the last one. You got to go see it because this is the last one. But then it made a ton of money, right? So it's like, what do you do? Well, you see what they did. But there was no master plan with this franchise at all. Every film justified the next until they didn't. When the 8th film, which Paramount had a little bit more internal involvement with, didn't make anywhere near what they wanted it to, Paramount said, no, you can pitch us another Friday. We don't want it. They had the right of first refusal. I mean, you couldn't shop it, but the franchise really peaks very, very early. It was just that they could make these films so cheaply that they kept being made.
I think this film made about like $30 million, $40 million at the US box office. It cost about $3 million, made like $40 million. So
that's the thing, right?
At this point, it was still.
Yeah. The other thing about this was that as much as Paramount was not, they didn't really want to be in the slasher business, although they released more than just the Fridays. At the same time, they needed something on the balance sheet. And the Fridays were solid performers. Even the lesser performers, the 7th and 8th films, really didn't bring home what they wanted, but they still made money. And this is a company that had gone through the Heaven's Gate fiasco, where it's like they spent a ton of money on something that lost them almost the entire investment. The idea of something safe, they'd sign that production deal every time because it was so safe and the flesh in the game was so little.
Yeah, that's why because of Heaven's Gate pretty much almost completely shut down United Artists. It wasn't. It was the Bond films that saved them. Four Eyes Only came out and was a big hit.
Yeah,
company, and I believe most of their Paramount's prestige pictures weren't box office hits in this time period.
I will say that pink jeans probably should be outlawed. And I'm a libertarian saying that. But no, again, I just think if you compare Chris to Ginny or Alice or... Man, I'm telling you, like, this girl has no personality. And it's not the actress's fault, I don't think. It's just there's no role there. She walks around...
I think they went for looks. They went for looks more than, vulnerability and acting ability. I mean...
I don't think she's bad. I just don't think there's anything to work with here. I mean... Like, there's small little things in both the Alice and Ginny performances that really sell the character. She never has any of those moments. Chris just... I don't know.
Gotta show off those abs.
Look at that.
Now this is another thing that's bizarre to me. Be like, they're here to vacation for a week, get high with their old hippie friends, which makes no sense. But they're working hay. Like,
well, he's working hay. You gotta keep that physique.
I'm just not sure what's going on.
But you think you get that by hanging on the couch with stoners, dude?
Well, that's probably true. But this, in a true like film construction sense, they're doing this so we understand geographically the location that's going to be important for the climax of the film. That's what the scene is really doing from a construction standpoint. But
Well, also to set up the rope gag, like towards the end.
exactly. But it doesn't make any logical sense whatsoever. Which again, if you're looking for logic, you're probably looking in the wrong area. But the difference between this and like again 5 or 8 to me is that this is not insulting me. It's just not very smart.
This scene, he's just like pulling the rope. A scene like this would not be in They Them, I don't think.
Well, also he just broke her ankles.
Easily. Ha ha. I just broke my girlfriend's ankles.
Now she can't go anywhere.
Yeah. It also is very honestly like the set design of this place is just bizarre. Like who lives here? The Jarvis house next film makes complete sense. Looks like real people live there. This looks like you let people on a budget, do a set design for a movie.
Well, it's a cabin in California. It's not supposed to make sense.
Exactly. There's a wicker basket and this like ornate antique mirror.
Because they've never really had they never
really
like,
strange
their own,
wardrobe.
Exactly.
They've never really developed their own kind of sense of style, or at least it was just kind of like we're just going to do this, the Hispanic type, stucco, and then we're going to do like because like the massive divide and like the wage gap of kind of just like your everyday houses, and then you have your Hollywood, LA / San Diego and stuff, San Francisco.
I just want,
why is Shelley surprised that people don't like him?
Yeah, because he's unlikable. This can't be news to him.
He goes through this every day.
He's just waiting to sue their asses.
Why don't you like what I'm doing?
So it gets even more bizarre in a moment because it's like he just pissed everyone off and then someone agrees to go to the store with him. I mean,
should have taken the old hippie. He knows the best snacks.
And the fascinating thing here too is like this film presents a world where kind of we're going to just vaguely say northeastern rural town, right? It still kind of wants to be what the first two films established pretty clearly. But there's like a biker gang. But then in 2 films, it gets to be so rural that it like Crystal Lake is suddenly in Alabama or Mississippi, right? Because there's no way that's Jersey, right?
So can you tell just from like this, like a shot them walking through the field, like a son from Jersey, is it just like stand out to you that this is like not Jersey? In the way that it would if it was like in the UK, I'd spot something.
Looks way too dry to be Jersey.
Yeah, I mean,
it looks hot. It looks really hot as well.
All of the really good Friday movies to me have that wet, humid heat feel, and this one is void of it.
Yeah, it's completely California.
So is 6.
The difference is 6 has an exorbitant amount of style to it. I mean, whatever. Even if you hate 6, man, it's a well-made film. Wow, is it well lit? It's kind of remarkable in that sense. There's never been a Friday that looks as good as that film. That might not be a good thing, but it's true. It's an incredibly well-made film. I don't get this gang at all either.
They're like a gang out of a Clint Eastwood movie.
Yeah, well, exactly, right? Or a later Death Wish film.
They always look so like unimposing. It's like the beginning of the Terminator. where Arnie walks up to Bill Paxton and his two bows over ends. They just don't look like real gangsters. They just look like ridiculous. I don't know.
They're
It's
too
hard to
muscular
describe.
and
I just
Again, it's like I think if this wasn't such a Hollywood production, they wouldn't have gone so cliche with these bikers. Look at that. Oh my God. That is a Hollywood cliche all day long. It's
it's just like the Stoners. They're so
they're
over the
Cheech and
top.
Chong. Yeah.
Yeah.
why she gave him the let him drive, who knows?
And here's the thing, like, whatever you think of Shelley, this is the dumbest thing any human being could ever do.
Stops right in front of him. We gotta get that 3D.
Mhm.
that Olympia van looks like a bottle of Corona to me. It just looks like Corona lager. That Olympia van just looks like a bottle of Corona lager to me.
I think Olympia is a beer, isn't it? Or was a beer?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know when safety glass started to be a thing, but I mean, that VW did not have safety glass. Look at that. The plate is yellow, which that still could be a Jersey plate.
And they went all out with the design. He's got the chains, and he's got a Black Widow on the back.
He looks like Ghost Rider.
Oh god.
The yo-yo scene.
I do like the fact for the fourth film they kept the deer statue for that opening. The fourth film's opening is one of my favorite things in the franchise. Just the cops picking up the pieces and the paramedics being kind of like dulled out of their senses and not knowing what to do. I think that sequence, and especially how it ends with the helicopter leaving and the light goes out and you get this awesome extended moment of nothing in the aftermath of a crime scene. Like, this franchise was never that ambitious again.
I love that shot where Jason just opens the barn door and he just looks out.
Yeah, this movie needs a lot more killer point of view shots to bridge it with the previous films. I guess 82 is a big year for plaid. I just don't remember.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
And wearing sweaters draped over your shoulder.
In California.
And he's bringing another jacket. How many layers does this guy need?
He's like Gene Hackman out of Scarecrow.
80 degrees and he's got like 3 layers.
And the weird thing is, like, everyone in this film takes their turns going, we got to go away. We can't be here. Like, bizarre. Like, they go to this place intentionally and no one wants to stay.
That's a damn fine bikini shot, by the way. Just gonna say.
I don't think Jason would curl up the cuffs of his jeans. So that misdirect doesn't really work, right?
Yeah, as soon as you see that, you're like, no.
I do love. Here's the thing. Listen, the Springsteen is the boss bumper sticker, though, to try and give it some Jersey flair is pretty amazing. Someone cared in the production.
I like how she says maybe we shouldn't do this. Like why? It's like they don't look like they're too fussed about committing criminal acts, you know?
Yeah. It's kind of curious. Like, you think they all have like office jobs through the week, and this is on the weekend they just get dressed up. Though I will say, like, again, they're more interesting characters than any of the kids. There's so many ways this movie could have like stayed with more interesting characters. And Rick, the boyfriend, I don't understand at all. Like, the dude's like 40.
Well, he's there to take his shirt off and get his head like squeezed. That's like his role here.
This is a really fun movie. It sounds like I'm really picking on it, but it's a really fun movie. It's just, there's a lot of things. And you can't do this with every Friday. You can't pick apart every Friday quite as easily as this. But this film is entirely likable, despite its flaws.
I think this movie is moving up Lorne's list as the more he watches it. This could, by the end of the film, this is his new #1 film.
Oh, there's no chance. This is a zero chance.
You know, it's funny, but with these the saddles, those are actually worth a ton of money.
Yeah.
Way more money than you would think.
We're all getting closer.
We've
to
got
the
like an
iconic
old
scene as well.
Ancient canteen over here. Oh my god.
Oh, you figure since they shot it in California, they probably went to the Paramount and be like, we need a bunch of props. What do you have from old Westerns? That's just irresponsible, leaving a pitchfork on the ground like that.
I know, right?
Though it makes more sense than an X, that pitchfork murder, which makes zero sense. Where someone has to be kneeling in exactly the right spot for that to work. And you have to be on the other side waiting. Sorry, X. I know everyone loves X. And I liked it a lot too, but that scene makes no sense.
Pearl was watching too much Skyfall. Gotta have the exact right moment.
Right.
When to set a trap off.
I have zero excitement for Pearl, and I liked X.
Zero
Is that weird?
Excitement? Wow,
It looks
dude,
like
should be good. I mean, it's Ty West,
and he has a great track record with me, but I feel like I've done that, and I enjoyed it, and I'm good. Also, Pearl just looks cheaper. It looks like a much cheaper production.
I feel like there has to be a reveal of something we're not aware of that will, like, attempt to blow your mind or pull you in. Like, it can't just be like a straightforward story. I feel like there's got to be something that you're going to look back at the first movie and go, oh, you know?
I hope.
I feel like there has to be something like that.
Because otherwise it's pretty pointless, right?
Well, that X to me was a perfect standalone film. I never thought, I need a prequel to this film. I don't feel like I need a prequel. And I always thought she came across as quite a sympathetic character. But...
Like, you can kind of say, like, well, okay, she just, like, tied people in her basement and raped them because she was a pervert. Like, that's the loose end you tie up. But they never really showed what they were doing. And maybe it's something crazy that you didn't think of. Like, that's my perspective, giving them the benefit of the doubt that they're going to give us something.
So one of the things I always say is that what makes horror work best is the unknown. Like the things that we can't quite piece together but work for a story. That's really powerful. I don't like when movies over-explain. Like, I never want to know why Jason can't die. You give me some lame-ass reason, I'm going to recoil. Because it's going to be lame, right? nothing's going to be satisfactory. So leave it open. And I kind of think that more films should do that. X worked for itself. It's not a perfect film for me, but it's and I just did drop off my list of top 10 for the year, but it's still a film that spent a good part of the year on my top 10 list, and deservedly.
Have you talked about Prey yet?
I've not seen Prey yet.
Oh, you haven't?
I'm not a Predator fan, so I think it's one of those films that I'm going to be a bad audience for to begin with.
I kind of like to hear what you think about it, though, because everybody's so... Like, there's this new argument that everybody's too lenient on films now, and I feel the opposite. I feel that people are black or white. It's a masterpiece, or it's garbage and shouldn't exist. And I'm interested in hearing, like, at least what you thought of the movie.
So, what's interesting is, like, I don't care about any of the Predator films. I've seen them all. The first film to me is kind of cheesy, and not in a good way. Like, a lot of people love that pure machismo that goes, I don't care. And I'm not a mark for, like, Jesse Ventura or Arnold Schwarzenegger. I don't care.
How dare you?
Sorry. The second film I saw in theaters and kind of liked it, but I remember so little except for the ending where they tried to make him noble, and I was like, this is lame, and it contradicts the first film. So in the other two films, I mean, there were things that were cool in them, and there was things that were really, really awful in them. So I just have very little interest in Prey, but I will see it at some point, I'm sure.
I just got a random machete in this barn. It's like it would be like a hunting knife at best, or a hatchet or something.
To be fair, I have a machete in my garage. You have to understand that you don't use the chainsaw for twigs on trees when you take them down. You definitely want the machete.
Yeah, just give a shout out. JT's Super Horror Discussion channel. I'm subscribed to him. He's a small YouTuber, does lots of reviews. So anybody in the chat, anybody watching going forwards, give him a subscription. Good lad.
Is he domestic or is he an import?
He's American.
He's not important though.
I can always turn off the sound and turn on the captions and pretend it's an import. And New York, you're not far from me, man.
Oh.
I'll be right back, guys.
Natural position.
I think the just briefly going back to Prey, I think what it is with Prey, people have been like, really getting on board with it, giving it rave reviews. I think it's just like the low bar that the franchise has set since 2. I like 2, but anything after 2 with the AVP movies, Predators.
Oh, I wasn't even thinking about that.
It's such a low bar the franchise has set in the last 20 years that I think anything which is not horrendous kind of gets, like a really, really, people may be overplaying like how good the film is. It's an average film at best, in my opinion. Average film.
I just, I mean, I don't know. I think the Predator is a cool looking monster, but they've never built a film around it that I've like had any kind of like reaction to, a strong reaction. I don't know. I would love, you see, that's the kind of franchise I'd like them to do something legitimately different with. So set it on okay, you want to hear my Predator? Here's my Predator pitch for you. Ready, Hollywood? Contact me. You start the film with a Predator hunting a group of human mercenaries, right? And it gets shot by even worse, nastier alien species that's also a hunter. And you spend the rest of the film that Predator trying to get revenge for being, taken out of the battlefield. You do something big with it. You just don't do the same damn movie, which this did. It just changed up like gender and time period, right? It's like still like a hunter being hunted that turns the tables. It's like every goddamn movie. Just do something with it.
Speaking of the Predator series, Predator, the novelization for Predator 2 was written by the same person who did some of the Friday the 13th films.
Simon Hawke?
Novelizations. Yeah.
Oh, Simon.
Is that a pseudonym or is that?
Oh yeah. Not that it matters. It's not a big name horror writer. If you've read any of them, you understand. I'm not a big name horror writer, but and apparently he's gone a little loopy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I see most writers on Twitter, so
yeah,
they've gone loopy.
I think it comes with the territory. We're all a little.
This hammock scene is just really weird. I mean, why is it? Why a hammock? I don't know.
It's different. It's not just a bed.
Okay, can we talk about this backstory? Because I have problems with this entire flashback backstory. Not just because Jason has a chance to kill someone and doesn't, maybe rape someone, but we're not clear. But seriously, if any of that is true, this girl does not come back here. Not for therapeutic reasons, nothing. Forget about it. It does not happen. Even with the protection of her 40-year-old boyfriend.
He's a lot older. He's like so much older.
And also, like, this, the quality of the filmmaking that comes with this flashback is so bad. It is ridiculously poorly done. Weird editing choices. The voiceover, like, is... She should be going hysterical, you know, relaying the story, but she's kind of not. It's just a very, very weird scene.
How old is the guy in this? You know, the guy who played him. Is he like 20 years older than everybody else? It's just
not unless he has some rare genetic disease.
He's 18.
Yeah, he's Hollywood high school 18.
37.
No, wait. So she ran away from home to go sleep against a tree. I'm already not sympathetic to this person.
This I hate too, by the way.
This is bad, right? This is like legitimately bad. And her acting just does not rise to the occasion in either the flashback or the retelling.
Is this in 3D? Is she like sticking out or anything? I've always wondered that.
It looks a bit. It does look a bit 3D.
It doesn't have one of the big pop moments like the obvious stuff, but the film looks great in 3D. It does have a lot of depth to it. It does have a lot of projection. I don't remember in particular this scene anything sticking out.
Yeah, this was before they, I guess, fleshed everything out and they were trying stuff, but it's not something that Jason would do.
I think the idea legitimately was, and I don't think they explored it because they knew kind of it was a crap idea, but I think they thought Jason was really going to be dead at the end of this film, and then there was going to be a Son of Jason plot coming. But the problem is it's been too long. It's been over 9 months, so it doesn't really make sense. I don't know. It makes more sense than the flashback in 8 of trying to learn to swim, which not only violates continuity, but again, you're like, oh God, I hope she does drown. Then the whole movie doesn't have to happen. They can't have gone too far because they walk back.
Rick has not got a Wikipedia page, so I don't know how old he is.
By the way, guys, I have some Friday facts I can read.
Go for it.
Like, this is the movie with the first ethnic characters in the series. That's an actual Friday fact that's in this book.
I'm thinking the bar in 2 violates that, but we'll get back to it.
No, the bar and
maybe they mean like characters, like.
Are these characters? I mean, what's the definition of character in a Friday the 13th movie?
I consider Demons the first person of colour in the Friday the 13th franchise.
Well, it would be what's his
Well,
name?
The biker in this movie.
Reckless Reggie.
No, the
Reggie
biker in this
Reckless.
movie.
I've got a soft spot for Demons, so it's got to be Demon for me. Like, just forget everything happened in this film. It's Demon.
I wish I could forget. I will happily forget Demon and the rest of the movie he's in. I've been trying for years. You know, the irony is this film without the pot today would probably stand a good chance of getting PG-13.
He kind of looks like Steven Spielberg. Do you not think?
No.
No? Oh, he does a little bit.
Because you can't smoke in movies today without getting an R. So even if, especially tobacco. So, but it's not a particularly bloody movie, really.
Well, that could be said for a lot of movies from then.
It's like one of Jason's Scooby-Doo moments where he's walking around just narrowly missing people.
Looks more like Richard Dreyfuss.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Combinations of the two. Another 3D moments.
I find her necklace of the boot distracting. It's just a weird thing.
Paramount had pretty great this decade because we got the Friday films, and then we had the Star Trek films, and then speaking of Spielberg, we had the 3 Indiana Jones films, which were massive successes.
Today, Paramount scraped by on Sonic the Hedgehog.
Tom Cruise.
Yeah, and Tom Cruise, but
And it was those Transformer films were
Jesus,
were making them bank, and they had the Marvel films. They sold them off.
So Shelley's now grabbing women by the foot with a spear, and he still doesn't understand why women don't like him.
Yeah, so like, at what point do you still think he might hook up?
I thought he died a lot earlier. When you watch, I've not watched this film for about maybe 10 years. I always thought he died a lot earlier than the film. It's like he's still alive.
I
We
do
don't even know
appreciate.
how it ends this film.
This is where I think he had a chance, and she's finally just like, this dude's hopeless. And she tells him, like, I do like you, but you suck. And
Yeah, but she was not hooking up with him. That was not happening.
I don't know, man. If he had been smoother, could have happened, I think.
I don't see any indication that this guy can be smooth.
Well, that's the point. But just based off, like, looks alone, I think he would have been fine if he just had a chilled and like
And
hung
maybe
out
did
with
something
Cheech.
very different with the hair.
You can't do nothing with that hair. It's apart from
Yeah, there's
shaving
one
it
thing you
all
can do
off.
with that hair. Exactly.
Shave it off. But this is 82, right? This was all the rage. So
It's kind of dying out at this point.
Yeah.
If he threw some
No.
grease in it, it might have looked pretty cool.
not where I was.
This movie is so lucky that it introduced the hockey mask.
But also, how does it match this getup? He's got a diving suit on with a harpoon and then a hockey mask randomly.
He likes his masks.
He's trying to, well,
You gotta wonder why Jason decided, hey, wait, a mask is an idea. Like, he hasn't cared up to now, right? It's like the sack, but then it's like, ooh.
change it up.
Yeah, that's a cow's head. That's fucking great.
Well, that's one of the things. Like, the concept is that he's like the Elephant Man. He's ashamed of the way he looks. So it doesn't really work here because he goes this whole time without worrying about it.
Now, honestly, he doesn't remember that you have the wallet. Let it go. It's just not worth it. He'll think he lost it when he was in the water. But this moment in theaters in 3D gets, because I've seen the film twice in theaters, and it gets a big reaction every time. It's just there's so much about the scene that's iconic.
Oh, look, yeah.
This is the best shot of Jason in the movie, I think.
Definitely. And for my money, this, like, I know people love Kane Hodder's performance, and I think there's something to be said for it. But there's something just really menacing about the stillness of Richard Booker's like attack.
I hate that though.
He just walks away like
Dum, 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 dum. That's what I hear in my head whenever I see that scene.
I just think it's so much more effective than like heavy breathing and like I'm just full of rage. Like it's scarier that he doesn't really care about what he's doing.
You know what? It's way better than whatever from Halloween 4. Big bulky shoulders.
There's nothing to be praised about Halloween 4, really. I know people love it, but
Let's bash it.
Yeah, I mean it's Slaughterport's favorite Halloween.
Yeah.
and you know what? I think if it was like the first he saw in theaters or something, I can understand. It's a mess as a movie, and not a mess because it was ambitious like the fifth film. And it's a mess because it tried to be the first film but failed miserably.
Well, I mean, I'd never shit on it. I like it. It's far from my favorite, and it's got like Michael is really sad in that movie. He's just like.
Except when he's hanging on the undercarriage of a truck, which makes complete sense.
Oh, the head, the eyeball gag.
Not the bisection long wise that's coming up in I don't know 8 minutes or so.
Yeah, I mean it's got a few good kills.
Yeah, JT says favorite kill for you guys in this film. My favorite kill is about to come up right now. This jackass doing a fucking handstand.
Yeah, I love that too. That's.
I mean, it's brutal to think about, like getting split down the middle like that. Ugh.
Yeah, well, you've seen Terrifier. That the kill with though. Yeah, it's not much worse.
I'd actually say this might be worse because, well, I mean that's a hard thing to measure, but this is like a dull machete. That might be a little rougher. I don't know.
I just think this has this like that heavy exhale on the soundtrack when the hit happens. It's like it feels like something bad just happened to someone. Whereas everything in Terrifier, which I didn't think I kind of like was nonplussed by Terrifier. I didn't dislike it, but whatever, it's not really my thing. But everything was very showy. Like, look what we can do. Whereas this just feels like, oh God, that guy just got hit, like half his body bisected. So yeah, exactly, Ben. That's exactly. So that has to be a callback to the original Halloween, right? The whole beer thing.
Yeah.
Again, not to pick on the characters more than they deserve to be picked on, but like the fourth film, like the shower scene in the fourth film, you have a false final girl, you have an incredibly likable secondary character with personality. It's like the characters in that are so much better than this. The characters in 2 are so much better than this. These guys do feel disposable. Maybe not more disposable than the characters in the 7th film, but that's a whole different issue.
I think they're just grabbing an issue of Cinema Fantastique.
Hey, she goes for the Fangoria with the Godzilla article instead, because that's sane. Although it has a problem. It has a problem because that issue.
Oh, Tom Savini. I always forget that.
I should have gotten that issue out. It's over there somewhere.
Friday the 13th not there with Kevin Bacon. It's not done as well though.
No, the original film has it.
What were we going to say about the Godzilla?
Nothing, just as an article. See, that's cool. That's the coolest thing her character does is read an article about Godzilla.
Oh, I thought you were going to mention like the article was wrong or something.
Oh no, I don't know. I mean, I have all the issues of Fangoria from 79 to 90, but I've read them all, but some of them I read 30 years ago, so I don't know if.
Yeah, this is just a few years off from, just 2 years off from Godzilla's return to the screen. Had that nice little break from the
that salt she's dumping on that
Terror Mechagodzilla. That's what I should be doing a commentary on.
Terror Mechagodzilla? I'm down.
Oh yeah, hell yeah! I'll do any of them, even the really shitty ones. Godzilla's Revenge.
JT makes a point. Why did they make her pregnant in the movie? It seems like a strange decision. You know, for a
Shock
Friday
value.
movie, it's quite dark, isn't it? But it's shock value to the level that I think more so. Like a Friday film for me has always been, you know, it's a slasher film, but to throw a pregnant woman into the mix and then have her killed off, it just seems like a little bit beyond what the Friday franchise was about. If that makes sense, it was always a bit fairly like innocent kind of franchise in that respect.
No, it's all
In the
the
way,
series is all about his innocence is broken because of young Jason.
It's just that they, let's be honest, they didn't have anything to identify that character. She's a girl with her boyfriend who has sex with her boyfriend and dies. There's no character there, so they added her being pregnant as a character beat so that you could identify her. It's
I don't
not.
think there was a lot of thought put into it.
That's it. That's all there is. They gave so she could have those 3 lines of dialogue where she reveals something about her character. That's it. I do love this. Now, so Shelley takes forever to die.
it just seems a bit of it just seems it just seems a strange choice for a Friday movie, though, like a Friday the 13th movie, like to just throw it in. I don't really know why. It just seems like an odd choice for this franchise because it was never a franchise to me that was really speaking about, you know, social issues and shit like that. It's just to bring in a pregnant woman. I don't really know why. It just seems it just seems to be like a bit of a weird.
Well, to go back to the old trope of like, you know, premarital sex, drugs, and alcohol. I mean, I doubt those 2 stoners are married, right?
I think by this point in the series they were kind of embracing that criticism, which is what it was. But the first 2 films, that doesn't play at all, really, if you watch the movies. Alice is not virginal in any sense, and either is Jenny. But here, we certainly get a kind of like the only sex that Chris has had is if Jason did have sex with her. And Trish, you have no clue of. Like, the sexuality is just not a part of that character. There's dead animals all over this house. I'm just pointing out. Skunks and moose.
Yeah. That wind does not real.
No. That is Hollywood wind. We can't move the camera because the fans won't reach any further. What happened to this guy's jacket, by the way? Remember he had the jacket? Oh, it's on
Wind
her.
blew it off.
Yeah, he put it on her. I get it. That's
Continuity,
not fair.
baby. They
No,
nailed it.
it's fair. This really is the film, though, that turned Jason into the supervillain, that part of the public consciousness. There was just it was a really big film. The 3D brought people out to see it that wouldn't ordinarily have gone. The mask made him identifiable in a crowd. You know, this film deserves a lot of credit for the franchise enduring. Even though, again, I think of the first 4, it's the weakest. It did most of the hard work to make the series relevant for the next 30 years.
Everybody else is taking off. I don't know what's going on, but I'm gonna go outside and take a look around.
Wait, I want to come with you.
Whose decision was it to bring the mask in?
Everyone wants to take credit for it.
Yeah, there's that big, like, nobody really knows at the end of the day. I would imagine
Because it wasn't. This is.
Go ahead.
Is the mask situation got anything to do with the Sean Cunningham, Victor Miller court case? Is the mask any part of that? Or
Not
is that
directly.
more to do with the?
Not directly. The thing is, I don't want to rehash the lawsuit in too much detail, but all Victor Miller owns currently is his original screenplay. He does not own the first film. He does not own any derivative works already made after his first film.
Here it is, boys.
But in order to use, to use anything that's present in his original screenplay, you have to license through him. So he has no claim to the mask whatsoever.
Or Jason, right? Just Pam.
Well, no, he does not. Actually, the interesting thing is his screenplay only refers to as Mrs. Voorhees. So if they made a Friday film with Victor Miller's involvement but without Horror's involvement, they could never refer to her as Pamela Voorhees. He'd be Mrs. Voorhees, or they'd have to come up with a new name. If it's not on the page in his original screenplay, he does not own it. And if it's anything that is in the films that followed, he specifically is barred from using it, unless he created it in that original screenplay.
I mean, am I the only person who doesn't want a new one?
No, I don't want a new one either, but we're both losing that battle later this year.
I felt like that lawsuit was a blessing in disguise.
Yeah. Chris, 100%.
I want a new one.
Well, if
so
it's
what's
good,
going on then?
I won't care, but I just think the likelihood that it's going to be good is so far out of reach.
So Bloody Disgusting are reporting that there's something's going to happen in the next few months, but is the court, something's gone on, obviously, with the court case, that they must be able to, they're fairly confident in saying that something is coming out of this whole thing. So, well, they haven't explicitly stated what is coming out of it. They've just said basically, watch this space. So something's gone down, obviously.
Yes. We'll talk off the air. But
okay.
The big problem with the franchise is named Mark Toberoff. He's a lawyer who chases rights ambulances. He's been responsible for attacking Marvel, the Predator rights, the Nightmare on Elm Street rights, the Friday the 13th rights. He is a parasite who gets original writers to reclaim their work so that he can, instead of taking money up front, end up with producer credits on the resulting films. For instance, he's a producer on Prey. You want to know who started the lawsuit, the Friday lawsuit? Don't get on this bandwagon of blaming Miller or Cunningham. His name is Mark Toberoff. That's your villain. Of course, if you don't want another film, he might be a blessing in disguise. But he's still, a parasite lawyer. Google him. Go to his IMDb page. You'll be shocked.
It's the serious trademark for me. It's throwing people through windows.
And this time it's the right actor. That's why they hired this dude. Yeah, you're 40, but it looks like you'll do your own stunts.
It's hard to see Kane Hodder falling down like that.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the problem of the later films, too, is that Jason works better to me when he's in a frenzy after he gets the shit kicked at him a little bit, and he works up to the anger. But Kane was just always angry. He didn't work up to anything.
I kind of like that, though. I kind of like that he's just this, walking ball of vengeance who's always on 11 and always just, grabbing the nearest thing that moves to him. I've always liked that.
I like Hodder's performances. I just prefer... Well, Ted White would be my favorite performance because that is a seething rage that builds and builds until the staircase scene where he has to choose between Trish and Tommy. And you really feel Jason's frustration in that moment. As an actor, he conveys just physically so well. But I like
Do you not
CJ
feel that,
Graham
like-
as well.
Do you feel that like Kane Hodder gets a bit of a raw deal? Because from like a lot of people like maybe look upon Kane Hodder because he's done the 4 movies, and because a lot of like what people say normies will always say Kane Hodder, that a lot of like more hardcore fans go, oh no, for that reason I'm going to go with one of the guys who just did the 1 movie.
Well,
Does that make sense?
that's usually the
Because
case in everything.
a lot of people, yeah, because I think Kane Hodder's a great Jason. I think Brooker's my favorite, but I'd probably put Kane Hodder like at number 2.
I
Personally,
mean,
but
Kane is mine. I don't care if it's normal or if it's the normie way to go. That's the Jason that I saw first. It's the Jason I saw the most. It's what I think of when I think of Jason. Like, and I mean,
And-
he did in a franchise where like up till then every Jason was completely different. He put like mannerisms and he stuck to them. Like, even if it's not your favorite portrayal, like you got to admit that he was the most consistent in the series.
He's by far the best
Well,
thing about 7 and 8. There's no question in my mind. But again, I think that it's such a pantomime performance. I can't imagine getting point of view shots from behind a shrub of his Jason watching someone, right? Whereas, like, I like the character stalking, but with that version of Jason, he just storms in and kills, and storms into the next place and kills. And there's something to be said for that. But I'm a mood and atmosphere guy, so I love dread. You know.
Well, for me, like that's Michael Myers, and like I understand that wasn't the case, but the way I was introduced to the movies, that was the difference. Michael stalked, and Jason like walked through walls and like ripped people in half. Like, you know, that was the big difference between the two.
I guess it really depends on where you entered the series, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but like 100%, my whole perception of the franchise is based off of 5, 7, and 8. Like literally, those are the ones I watched all the time when I was a kid.
I think it's kind of in a way like more about the filmmakers than the actors in the case of the Fridays. To be honest with you, like for me, a great performance as Jason is still a performance of a guy who's walking around killing people. You can do it really well, don't get me wrong, but if the rest of the movie around it isn't worth watching, then
I'm Jason.
I don't know what to tell you, you know? This limp does not carry over to the next movie, by the way. Then again, either does really, traumatic shock to skull and brain tissue. So maybe that actually helps Myers. I don't know.
And also, like the night before, he got his shoulder like split down to his nipple. So
yeah. But that's something that X does so well when it just outright explains that he regrows bone and tissue. It's like what you've always suspected. We're just gonna say.
Did anybody see Jamie Blank's Twitter when he tweeted out he'd want to direct a new Friday film? He'd set it in the 80s.
That's what I want. I want 80s and I want undead Jason.
He basically said, get rid of the cell phones, modern technology.
That's how I am with reading books. Reading books like with cell phones just makes my skin crawl.
Boy, are you gonna hate something coming up from me in about 2 years? I don't know. I in one hand, I feel like we have all those 80s movies already, and let's get a really great writer to write something that takes place now that exploits what's going on now. I'm not sure a cell phone defeats Jason. Like, what? You're gonna call a cop? That's been tried before.
Well, has anybody read the Nick Antosca script for the 3D? That's what I want.
Mm,
All
I
right.
do. And
many killers running around.
well,
So I want to
we
say
might be
one
thinking
thing.
of a different script because the one I'm talking about is just like
Oh,
New
is that the
Blood
found
Jason.
footage?
No, it's New Blood Jason. It's set in the 80s, like hyper 80s, like Stranger Things, flock of seagulls playing, people with teased hair, and Jason is just like brutal. And there's a scene like towards the end where somebody calls the cops, and he's just like mowing through people. Nobody can stop him. And at one point, like they get the mask off of him, and somebody shows him like a locket with Pam's thing, and he just like smiles because he doesn't give a fuck. He's not like Frankenstein, and
I
he's
love
just like
this.
mowing through people. And it
I love
sounds
this.
badass.
The pissed off Jason kicking and thrashing around. But before I get derailed
I've heard
again, more mention than Jason X. With Jason self healing. That's just another thing they stole from Godzilla, man. Godzilla, his cells regenerate.
I've already given my thoughts on a new Friday film. Did it in my last live stream. Anybody wants to go watch the last live?
If we get something worthy, then all of us are going to be happy with it, right? But just seriously, domestic horror over the last 10 years, is it capable of making what we like in a Friday the 13th? And my answer is probably not. So I kind of would rather... Right now, the Fridays have a great track record for me. I'm not one of these guys that's an uber fan that says, I love them all. Well, I don't. There's two that I really dislike. One I hate, one I dislike strongly. But you know what? There's 12 films. That means there's 10 films in this franchise that I genuinely like to love. And you know what? 3 films from this franchise make it onto my top 25 films of all time. That's an incredible track record. Let's not make it any worse. That's how I feel.
I'm the same. I think of that with a lot of things, just remakes in general, like Nightmare. Like Friday and Nightmare were so of their time. Like they're 80s slashers. We're not gonna make one now. It's just let it like live gracefully. Make something new, even if it's derivative. I would rather see something derivative that's good, that doesn't have this legacy leaning on it, so people don't love it or hate it automatically going in.
So let me ask a serious question. If Universal had made a straight up Frankenstein film in the mold of the original Frankenstein in 1972, would it have worked? For the audience that was a year away from watching The Exorcist. And yet that's what we're talking about. We're talking about taking something that worked really well 40 years ago and doing it again today. It's time for us to just move on. I mean, the fact that I love these films doesn't change the fact that we need to get to that next level. And it might be films that we as a generation don't particularly love, but the younger generation do. Maybe it's their time. But while we're maybe making more Texas Chainsaw Massacres and more Halloweens and more Friday the 13th and more Chucky television series that I will never watch.
Oh,
I don't know.
Not that bad, bro. You should watch.
I watched the first episode and it was painful. And people do tell me it gets better, but I don't know.
No, I think you won't think it gets better. No.
Okay.
I liked it, but I like Seed and Cult of Chucky too. Like I like the whole franchise.
I like Seed. Actually, I like with Child's Play. I'm weird because I don't like the third film at all, and I know people do, but the rest of the franchise I like, and I like Seed. I think Seed is an obscene piece of crap that I love.
Yeah.
In ways like Bride, which I thought was great in theaters, but I think it's too safe of a movie now, where Seed went crazy, and I was like, okay, that's it.
Well, I've always loved like the whole like that franchise doesn't care if you like it.
Yeah.
And they kind of did the same thing in the show, so I'll always be on board for that.
Child's Play is weird because I've never been rooting for the series. and way more often than not, it succeeds, and that shouldn't happen, right? With my personality, I should like be watching them crossed-armed, but every time they kind of get me,
Well,
except for the third film, which I just think is repetitive in the second.
I think it's because Don Mancini has, like, he puts himself in it, he cares about it, and that comes through. No matter what he does it because he's genuinely into it, and he puts himself into it.
Speaking of derivative,
Oh,
yeah, definitely.
I hate this sequence. It's so bad. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't look good. It doesn't even work as a jump scare. What are we doing?
I like how she just walks away from. He's had, an axe to the head. He survived hanging, numerous other. He's just. I'll just walk away. I'll leave him alone. He's dead. I'm sure he's dead. Camp Crystal Lake looks disgusting in this image. It looks like some horrible swamp. It just.
Yeah, in the first one, it was like a beautiful scenic shot. In this one, it's this.
Yeah. It's green.
Shout out Blairstown. Well, this was like not even this lake in the setting is like minutely small. They had to watch how they shoot it because you can see the like banks from any direction. So
yeah, it looks like she's in a creek.
Yeah, it's not great.
that's been the problem with like movies set in California, is because they just, unless they're in like one of the cities, it just looks so flat and it's just nothing but desert practically, or these kind of dry. That's why when you're getting in more of the east, it just looks way more photogenic and just lush, and
It's way more
visually
interesting, right?
yeah.
Well,
So-
I just figured it out. Hold on, real quick. She's not in a small lake. She's in the channel that runs to Manhattan. That's what it is.
Now, why would Jason be in this window? Can someone explain that to me? So, I, for the life of me, can't figure the sequence out, any part of it. And it was shoots, okay, so that's fine. They clearly made it up as they went along. They knew they wanted to get Mrs. Voorhees back in somehow, some way. He's not even in the right building. It's crazy how lazy this sequence is. But I was going to say, we talked about the lake looking great. One thing, it's in Never Hike Alone, that wonderful panoramic shot of when the hiker goes over the mountaintop and the lake reveals itself and it has that small island growing in the middle and it's this big, lush, beautiful. That's kind of what I want from Crystal Lake now. As opposed to Mrs. Voorhees with her head back on and some kind of eel worm coming out of her face. Which just looks bad, by the way. But the sweater's held up remarkably well because it's actually the sweater from her 40-year-old boyfriend.
I thought the makeup looked good. It's just weird how they shot it where it's not even a jump scare.
No, it's not.
It comes up slowly and it just holds on her. It's like, it's weird.
And where's the fade to white? Right?
Yeah.
We need our fade to white because I love the fade to white. The cop with the gang tattoos. I love him. This guy looks more like a real biker than the bikers we got earlier.
I was going to say, what cops in the early 80s have had tattoos?
Some, yeah.
Not in Britain. Not in,
ex-military, so yeah, definitely. I think that's
yeah.
Especially
Yeah.
if we're still saying this is Jersey, sure, I'll buy
This
that.
is America.
Yeah.
We got the.
Oh no!
freedom
Don't
to
get me
do
wrong.
it.
Don't get me wrong.
This is America.
Cops in the UK have
There we
tattoos
go.
now, but
I can't get. There we go.
All the-
Jason and
all the-
Jenny.
nice.
So when people say
all
I'm
the-
a hater of this series, just let them know.
All the cops in over there in the UK, they're all former droogs.
The what?
They have their own vocabulary too. It was a literary joke. No one else will get it. It's just me and I do love that image of Jason with the axe in his head. It's a beautiful, beautiful image. There's moments this film just nails images, and I think that's helped its reputation too. That shot of the lake, which looks like, I don't know, a river at best, not great.
Yeah.
That's the channel that runs to Manhattan.
But they were trying to evoke the first films, like the ripple on the water indicating something, and it just doesn't work. It's hilarious.
This film has something that tons of films these days do not have, and that is I can
Opening
actually
credits.
watch it. I can actually watch it. Well, it keeps me engaged.
It's a really likable movie. And I think a lot of that comes from it feels like a real film. A lot of what I see now doesn't. I mean, like, I tried to sell it to people, like, all the time, but Top Gun Maverick was a revelation to me this summer, simply because, not that I'm a big Top Gun fan, but Jesus, it looked like a real movie.
Yeah.
When did that become possible again? JT.
A lot of people have said
Superhorror?
the top on top. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, JT Super Horror discussion. Forget Chris out of there, and you might get your wish.
Okay. Are we referring to a future?
I wouldn't do that.
No, okay.
Look at that. Mitch Bogdanowicz. That's a name. I think Mitch is I imagine him as a heavy drinker who's probably the best 3D technician you've ever seen, but barely speaks English. Look, John Carpenter worked on this film. Without the H.
Movie Ranch in California.
Where life is cheap and the unions are not.
Has anybody seen Dash? You haven't seen Dashcam. I know you haven't seen Dashcam, Lauren. I know you turned off.
I turned that shit off.
Dashcam. Yeah, the most entertaining thing about Dashcam is the end credits, where she just basically raps over the end credits to each.
No.
Yeah, that's literally the best.
I need to see that. I've heard so many people hate on it that I just have to see it.
It's if you seen Host.
Yeah.
Yeah, Host's a good film. This is not.
Host was great for the time that it came out. I haven't watched it since then.
This is another COVID lockdown type, movie. It's not good. It's unlikable characters, epileptic inducing sort of camera work.
Shite.
I just wanted.
Shite.
I didn't even want the characters dead. I wanted me dead watching that film. So I turned it off so I wouldn't be tempted to go over that rainbow bridge.
Well, I guess sum up our final thoughts on 3D.
Well, I've always said it's my. I think it's my third favourite, the franchise, after 4 and 6. Obviously, the introduction of the mask makes it. It's such an unusual franchise, Friday the 13th, in that, we've got technically 3 different killers in it, but you've got Mrs. Voorhees, you've got Human Jason, Zombie Jason. You've got a franchise that doesn't introduce its most iconic device until the 3rd film. You've got a franchise that goes into space. It's just you've got I totally forgot about the killer who isn't even Jason in part 5. It goes in every different direction you want, which and with my only as crazy as it gets, at least it mixes things up a little bit. The Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, apart from number 2, I felt always played the same safe sort of routine. And I'm not a fan of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise at all. I
Neither am
know
I.
Chris. I know Chris is. I know Chris, you are, but it doesn't do it for me.
Not.
I'm sorry,
They're
man. Sorry.
They're so 80s, man. They're so
I
important
don't
to
see.
our
I don't see 80s as a
pop culture
benefit.
history, dude.
I lived through
Well,
all of the
late
80s.
80s, early 90s. Is that better? It's the pop culture like image that Hollywood wanted you to think the 80s was. MTV, flashy.
I'll never knock. I love the first two. I like the first two. I wouldn't say love. I like the first two films. I like three to a point, but I was more of a fan of like real world the whole idea of killing in the sleep. I always felt it's got to be there, in the flesh, real. Don't get me wrong, Freddy was a bigger star in the 80s than Jason will ever be. I think he crossed over the threshold into like the mainstream more than Jason ever has. He's totally irrelevant now. Don't get me wrong. Freddy is just utterly irrelevant now in 2022. Jason and Michael have far overtaken him in relevance, but I don't think anyone ever came close to Freddy in like that late 80s time. He was an MTV. He was on, MTV, and I think the test for me is like if someone's crossed over into like the cultural zeitgeist, or whatever you want to call it, I'll just ask my parents. So, when it comes to wrestling, does my mum know who Hulk Hogan is? Yes. Does she know who John Cena is? No. Does she know who Freddy Krueger is? Yes. Does she know who Jason Voorhees is? She hasn't got a fucking clue who Jason Voorhees is.
Really? Because, I mean, from my experience, they were almost head to head, and it was like they went hand in hand a little bit. Because there was always that whole, like there wasn't one top one. It was like, which one is better? They're kind of competing directly with each other.
I just think with Freddy being able to talk, the charisma, it crossed over more into like because do you remember the Jason Voorhees being on Arsenio Hall?
Yeah, that was great.
And he can't say anything. He just sits there and goes, nods his head. It's like you're a little bit limited.
Also, Freddy embraced what it was doing. It didn't try to be like serious after part one, really. It just went full on into this is an absurd, over the top, like cartoon. And Friday the 13th seemed like it was struggling with being serious and being hokey, not wanting to go one way or the other. So,
I'd be curious to get Lorne's opinion, actually, because Lorne, obviously you're a little bit older than me. You're in the States, obviously. So, do you think that the MTV had the influence on the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise going forward? Do you think that it intentionally went more comedic because they saw Freddy Krueger as a possible? Do you think that the makers of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise saw the MTV generation and maybe try to jump on that bandwagon and maybe make Freddy Krueger a little bit more mainstream for like that MTV generation? Because MTV obviously must have been becoming a big thing in around 86, 87 in the US. So I'm just wondering whether they intentionally tried to jump on the bandwagon a little bit.
It's so tough for me to talk about Nightmare on Elm Street because people are very judgmental about my opinion. Because I'm in the extreme minority. I think the first film is a masterpiece, and I'm not a Wes Craven fan. But I think Nightmare on Elm Street is a masterpiece. The man made 3 masterpieces in his career. By any measure, that makes him an incredible filmmaker in the genre. But he made a lot of crap, too. That a lot of people like, but a lot of crap. But here's the thing, like, Nightmare on Elm Street was released by New Line Cinema at a time where their previous biggest moneymaker was a re-release of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. They found themselves making money every year off this franchise. And the weird thing is, the less serious they took it, the more money they kept making. The first film isn't a slasher film at all. I would completely reject 100% anyone who tells me that A Nightmare on Elm Street is a slasher film. It is a ghost story. Period.
It
It's
has
not.
strong slasher elements.
It doesn't. It absolutely doesn't. It's ultimately a movie about a dead we'll say serial killer. We won't get into the other part of the argument, but it's about a boogeyman that attacks you in your dreams, and you die in real life if he kills you in the dreams. That is not a slasher.
Well, it's a supernatural slasher.
It's not, though. It has more to do. It has more in common with The Ring than it has to do with Friday the 13th.
Well, I think the point though is that a slasher, an American 80s slasher, is kind of, it just means like by the numbers killer.
And it became
he goes down the line of teams.
That's where I'm going. I don't think the first film qualifies at all, but by the time you get to part 3, it 100% qualifies as a supernatural slasher, because it became, okay, we're going to set up 9 characters and we're going to knock down 8. Whereas the first film is about basically 4 kids who are having nightmares. And if you drown in nightmares, you drown in life. So I think
but also that's an argument where a lot of people say Strangers is not a slasher, and it 100% is, and it only involves 3 people.
Well, it's a home invasion film, though. That's kind of a subgenre of the slasher.
No, I strongly believe Home Invasion was made up for that movie because people who didn't like slashers liked it and didn't want to say they liked the slasher.
That's an argument for another day, because we can talk about the films that came out before that definitely qualify as home invasion. Maybe the word wasn't there, but it's a little bit different of a format. But that's not important. What is important here is that as they took the films less seriously, and there's no question that like part 4 is a lot less serious a horror movie than the original, right? Is there any world where you're not saying that Freddy in Sunglasses is a more serious version than what we got in the original film? No. So as they got sillier, they made more money. And that's how we end up with Freddy's Dead. It really is. So I don't think they were looking at MTV particularly. They just thought, hey, hair metal's big. Let's get a big hair metal band to do a
They
song.
100% were. They had a freaking, to market Dream Master, they had a like 24-hour marathon hosted by Freddy Krueger. Like it was 100% directly tied to MTV.
I think though, if they had, I think they were just going for any way to get butts in the seats. That's what I'm saying. And however now you can't put Jason introducing videos because he doesn't talk, right? Freddy became this marketing machine, but it stole all the horror elements away to the point where honestly, the horror comedies including and after the third film, they're not straight horror anymore at all. Yeah. And that's fine. People do love that. That's cool. It's not where my sweet spot is. My idea of a horror comedy is something like Return of the Living Dead, whereas things could be funny, but still it still be suspenseful and scary.
Well, see, I think 3 toes that line, though, personally.
So when I saw 3 in theater, I've said this before, but the moment the series died for me was the Welcome to Prime Time bitch moment. The entire theater burst into laughter, and then something happened that had not happened to me in a horror film before. They didn't shut up. The theater just kept talking as if they were watching a comedy, and they were laughing at stuff that wasn't even meant as jokes. They stopped taking the film seriously as a horror film. And I know a lot of people say it toes the line better than anything that came later. Okay, whatever. But it was the movie that betrayed that seriousness of the first 2 films. Second film has problems. It really does. Like, I know a lot of people have elevated it now, but it's not the first film. The first film is terrifying the first time you see it. Or at least it was for my generation.
Well, see, again, that's exactly what it is. It's generational 100%. It's based off experience. Like the first one I saw was the first one, but I saw the sequels so often, especially Dream Warriors. And like, I mean, same with Jason. I watched 5, 7, 8 with Freddy, I watched 3 and 4 and 6 a lot, and I like those movies. Like, it's all just, I think, a generational thing where, or not even generational necessarily, just situational, what you saw a lot. Because that's the big thing. To most people, I have like really shit taste, and it's not shit taste. It's just
It's your taste.
it's different.
No, listen, I don't want anyone to not enjoy a film that they otherwise would enjoy. I like disturbing horror. That's, if you want to really impress me, disturb me. The Nightmare on Elm Street series after the first film are not trying to disturb me. Maybe bits and pieces of the second film, but like the series went in a different direction that doesn't appeal to me as much as it appealed to other people. Now, eventually, I think by the time of Freddy's Dead, most people who loved what the third film was doing, they bailed on it because it went too far for a lot of people. Again, not speaking for anyone in particular, but what I wanted to say, Mike, in answer to your question, which is not an answer to your question, is the real damage that Nightmare on Elm Street did was that when Nightmare on Elm Street outwore its welcome, the entire horror genre basically shut down theatrically. And that led to the great horror drought, because the horror comedies that was driving people into seats were suddenly not popular. They were considered lame. And every time they tried to do something, it just failed at the box office. Worthy films that could have started franchises like Body Parts is a good example, were just stillborn. Even the original Candyman, which we tend to think of today as, oh, it was a big hit. It made money, but it didn't make anywhere near the money that the films that we're discussing, like the classic slashers, made. It just was an awesome film, right? So it's endured really well. But the 90s horror drought really is a backlash to what all the Nightmare on Elm Street imitators of the late 80s did. And entering the 90s, there was just culturally, we were in a big shift. Hair metal was out, alternative was in. Anything that was culturally relevant during the 80s was being pushed aside in the 90s. And Nightmare on Elm Street style horror definitely was part of that.
I always feel that, like, going into 1990, like a new decade, and then I think it was 1990 that Silence of the Lambs dropped. It was just kind of a shift towards a slightly darker, more real world, psychological horror. And, you know, we kind of saw that moving forward into the early 90s. People have moved on from slasher movies, and, you know, the psychological horror movie, it didn't set in as much as the way the slasher movie did in the 80s. It certainly made an impact, but it had a big impact certainly on what people were going to release in the early 90s. You know, Seven was kind of like maybe the final throw of the dice in that sort of genre. And then once we got to 96, we went more back towards the 80s again with Scream. Okay, it was a 90s movie, but we started moving back more towards that 80s sort of like old school slasher feel. But those sort of first 5 years of the 90s, films like Copycat with Sigourney Weaver, you know, these kind of, which wasn't a very good film, but but it was kind of along the lines of those, you know, real world. You know, there was an obsession, big obsession with serial killers at that time, and
it was all the domestic thrillers, you know, thanks to Fatal Attraction. We were getting just inundated with, you know, Hand That Rocks the Cradle, Copycat,
Single White Female, all that crap. But what's interesting is, and I just want to point out that I kind of like always want to warn people, like when people say Scream came out in 96, it makes it sound like the horror drought was really short. But it really isn't, because it came out at the tail end of 96. We had 3 years at the end of the 90s where the slasher rebirth boom really happened. The majority of the 90s were really tough for horror fans. I remember, because I was trying to buy tickets. If you didn't see a film on its opening weekend, there was a good chance you were not going to see it until video. A really good chance. And that's true of even things like Army of Darkness, which you would think would have stuck around theaters. It didn't. Yeah, because it just wasn't drawing people into the seats.
And that's where the shift with Raimi, he had to go start doing mainstream, you know, like Quick and the Dead, For the Love of the Game.
Yeah,
I think he does something brilliant like A Simple Plan.
Well,
good source
based on a
material.
Scott Smith novel, right? That always
Yeah.
helps a little bit.
But but you can see like he got away from the horror, and that was why the whole big Drag Me to Hell. Everyone was going
Which is an
gaga
awful
over it.
film, but it's just
Well, I'm just saying it.
thinner
Everyone was,
painted over really
and
slightly.
even Carpenter was kind of like he was doing Memoirs of the Invisible Man, and he's just like, okay, it took him 2 years to bounce back with In the Mouth of Madness.
But In the Mouth of Madness, again, saw it opening weekend, or you didn't see it in theaters.
Yeah.
The 90s were like, I've heard a lot of people doubt that the 90s drought was a real thing, because a lot of people who grew up in the video store, it didn't feel like it. There was direct video horror coming out every week. But that was also a thing where it's like, if you wanted to see a Charles Band production made directly to video, you could see them 6-8 times a year, sure. But for those of us who grew up on these films from the 80s, and really different experience. And today, people are watching their movies on their phones, the new releases on their phones. I think that's the next step. We went from theaters to home video, now it's to personal devices. It seems like horror is getting smaller and smaller to me, even though the popularity of horror as a general theme seems to be getting wider and wider, and the acceptance of it is getting wider. But it's definitely changed. And a film like Friday the 13th Part 3 released today wouldn't play.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, DJ.
What's up, buddy?
Just wanted to acknowledge you, man.
I think on that note, I'll start to wrap things up. It is like 7 minutes past 2 in the UK, so
Oh no.
I've got to be up. I've got to be up at 7 a.m. So I've got like 5 hours sleep.
Oof.
You got to get a different job than chimney sweep. Wow, that was a British joke.
I like to. That was a Mary Poppins joke, I think.
Pretty much. That's an American's idea of Britain joke. That's what it is.
Yeah. I know it is. Anyway, guys, thank you for jumping on board. It's been an experience. For everyone who's at chat, thank you for jumping on. Next Friday, myself and Chris are doing a retrospective of 1993. So we'll just see how much that horror drought hit in 93. There's still stuff to talk about.
I've got a stack of movies over there ready.
Is that Phantoms?
I'm just saying.
Phantom?
One of the high points of 93 is Jason Goes to Hell. That's kind of like the level we were at.
Well, hold on, because we are going to count this movie. It technically came out, I think, in 92 at a festival showing or something, but it got released in U.S. theaters at 93, so we're talking about it.
So you know. I know what you mean. That's a legitimately good film if you're thinking what I'm thinking. 2-word title?
Army of Darkness?
Oh, no.
Yeah, you probably can't see it because of my head, the poster.
There's a glare.
Yeah. I always thought Army of Darkness was definitely 93. Is it?
Okay, well, good, because there's a discrepancy there where half the time when you look it says 92, and then the other half of the time it says 93.
Definitely in the UK. I'm sure in the UK it came out in 93, but I could be wrong. But anyway, yeah, so everybody watching next Friday night, the same time, 1993 retrospective with myself and Chris. So hope to see everyone on board for that. Thanks everyone jumping on board tonight. For everyone in the game long, thanks for Lorne, thanks to Griff, thanks to Chris. And I will wrap things up now and say good night. That's where it takes 5 minutes to shut down.
He's the